The actor Peter Krause once said that parenting is about guiding the next generation and forgiving the last. Whether the conversations that you had at the dinner table as a kid, the decision to become a parent or not to be, or just trying to manage family life with working life, parenting plays a massive impact on who we are. I'm Stella Creasy. I'm the MP for Walthamstow and I'm the mum of two small children. This is the Mummafesto. In this podcast, we talk to people who are change makers in their daily lives about how parenting influences their perspectives. And this week, my guest is another MP, Alex Sobel. Alex was elected in 2017 as the MP for Leeds North West. He's been a shadow minister for tourism and for nature, and he's also the chair of the all-party group on Ukraine and has been organising aid convoys to go out there, as well as visiting Israel and Gaza. Alex, welcome to the Mummafesto. You've been an MP now since 2017. Start by telling us a bit about the last 7 years.
Thanks for having me on, Stella. 2017 was a slightly surprise election. We weren't due really to have an election at that point, and it was in the middle of Brexit chaos, which we had to live through and fight for a better day. And then we came out of that. We had another general election.
That chaos feels relatively calm, doesn't it, compared to the chaos that we're dealing with now?
Well, it's amazing that David Cameron accused us of having chaos at Miliband in the 2015 election, which would have been the calmest period ever, probably, compared to the actual chaos of him and his successors. So then we had 2019 election and then COVID. So I'm quite looking forward to one day finding out what it like a normal period of being a member of parliament is like. Maybe after the next election.
Alex, I don't think we can ever claim normality in this job. I think the reality is, but all that time, obviously, you've also been trying to have a family and bring up your family. And this podcast is about how when parenting and politics combine and what impact that has. So just tell us a little bit about what it is like trying to be an MP for a constituency outside of London and have a relationship with your family, but also do your job and also be in Parliament.
Yeah, when I was elected in 2017, my kids were 7 and 9, 6 and 9 actually, not quite 7, 6 and 9, and then now 13 and 16. And
so do they not talk to you at all?
No, it's okay. It's okay. And they're boys who talk less than girls. They're fine. They're absolutely. I really like the one thing. Like people say, oh, teenagers are hard. I feel blessed because mine are not hard. They can be annoying, but I was a teenage boy as well, so I understand that. So
No.
I feel their pain, but they're really good kids, especially considering the circumstance, which is what your question is about. But so it is very different at 6 and 9 than 13 and 16, and it's easier now than it was at the beginning. I mean, it's easier in two ways. One, I know what it's like to be an MP, and I'm sort of got used to it. And two, they're older, and actually older is easier, and it's about quality. So although it's not ideal, really, ideally, you see your children every day and spend time with children every day. That is just not possible because they live 200 miles away from Parliament. But we're, I suppose, lucky in a sense that our holidays are really similar to school holidays, and I really maximise my time with them in the holidays. And I include them in things. So when I was a shadow minister, I had actually, particularly my first brief, they were quite a lot of fun in the briefs. So so I was shadow minister for zoos for my whole 3 years in the front bench.
Shadow minister for zoos. I never knew that job existed. Oh my God, that is literally parenting heaven.
So first under tourism, second under animal welfare. So I had zoos, and I started going to zoos. If you've got young kids and you go to a zoo, you really can't go to the zoo without them. So they've been to a lot of zoos, and my youngest son, like for 3 years now, has said he's going to be a zoologist, and his whole thing now is going to be a zoologist. So you can see that actually, in some ways, my shadow role has shaped him, but actually in a really positive way, I think. And and so it's not all
My
bad.
God.
Yeah.
Please don't tell my kids that there's the possibility of getting to go to the zoo a lot if you get promoted, because I'll never hear the end of it. That you must have just been like the best dad in the world. What's your dad do? My dad's got a monkey.
Well, we're trying to get rid of people having monkeys in their own homes. That's Labour policy there.
I know, but
Primates
like you get
keeping
to
them
go
in
and
the zoo, in
see
the
the
zoo. Yeah,
zoos.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and also like he wants to do reptiles. So we've been to a lot of
Oh.
reptile houses, which in the winter is great because they're nice and warm. So so yeah, so
So
all those things, and I did theme parks and like loads of really cool stuff. Yeah, tourism.
So
Yeah.
anybody listening to this must be like that. Okay, if you're ever going to make parenting and politics work, if you can get that job where basically it's like, hey kids, I may not be around all the time, but when I am around, we're going to go and we're going to go and see the elephants and we're going to go and ride the roller coasters. Did you get to go to anything else?
With them, I mean, I've taken them to Leeds Festival. Yeah, there is good stuff. Sporting events. They get to go to sporting events with me. Because you get invited. I've got two big major sporting clubs in my constituency. They actually don't want to go anymore to the sporting events, particularly. So, because it's not football, they'll go to football, but they won't go to other sports. But I took them to the Lionesses when the Lionesses played at Ellen Road. I took them, so that was good. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There is, there are things, and it's a bit, if they write to you and say, we'd like to invite you and two guests, then really, your two guests have got to be your children, because otherwise you'll never hear the end of it. So, and it's good for them. So, there are good things, but it's not a normal parenting life, and it is strained, and there's lots of diary management. I mean, I think there is an element of every parenting with this diary management and football teams or sports teams, whatever activities they do. But I think it is much more layered. I think because it's not a 9 to 5 5 day a week job. It is a 7 day a week job, and the hours are the hours that you make it. And there's the good and the bad. So a lot of the stuff isn't a lot of fun, and you can't take your kids. And also, my younger one doesn't really, but my older one does come and campaign. He is a member of the party. That you can look at that either way. That's spending time with
Yeah.
your
Like,
parents, yeah. But they've been to a lot of late party fundraisers, and I'm not sure whether I'm
yeah,
scarring you for those
I've
or not.
struggled. I've struggled to persuade my toddlers that leafleting is fun times. Doesn't quite work. I guess
No, no.
that feeds into a very simple question I have always with people in this role, which is like, how do you explain what you do? Because with my kids at the moment, because politics takes me away from them, I call it going and doing boring things so that they don't feel they're missing out. Obviously, if I could offer them the opportunity to go and, I mean, my daughter had a thing about naked mole rats for a time, so I actually did take her to London Zoo to go and see to settle whether or not they wore crowns, because she was watching a cartoon where naked mole rats wore crowns, and being my daughter, she was determined to argue with me that that was what every mole rat had. But I've ended up calling our job boring so that they don't feel they're missing out. Obviously, your children are slightly older. What do they think of you being an MP?
Well, first of all, that thing about mole rats. If that was me, I'd have asked the zoo to put the crowns on. So just to.
I was so worried they were going to stitch me up and I would never hear the end of it.
um, but yeah, they were older, and like they were involved in the camp. Well, we had a big rally in 2017. They were both at the rally, and they sort of understood it from the beginning, and they understood that it was me going to London, and it was and it was an important thing to do. I was on the council before, so really, and I was on the council from when they were 2 and 4. So like so I've been an elected politician really their whole life, um, and I think that and a lot of the international stuff I do, they really understand the importance of it. So like human rights in places like West Papua, more recently in Ukraine and in Israel and Palestine, they really understand that. They've got grandparents who are also grounded in that, and particularly on Israel, Palestine, and Ukraine. My dad talks about it a lot, and that's sort of like, and that's like I was brought up like that, and they're brought up like that. So it's just sort of understood. Um, and it gives them, like, so like my older son's doing geography GCSE, he's going to do geography A level, and he's going to do sociology A level, and that is partly because he's been brought up in this milieu. So I've got one sciencey one and one humanities one, and but I think that me being an MP has added to it. If I'd done the job I was doing before, there might have been an element of that, but they've had much richer experience, I think. Although, there are very clear downsides that I see my children like 4 days a week, and then, and there's 3 days a week that I don't see them. And the older they've got, the less there's been the, like, I used to, every day I'd ring up, we'd do FaceTime and all that, and that has sort of got a bit less, but that's also, like, I think being teenagers. So
Yeah, I think even if you were in the room, they'd still grunt, wouldn't they? It's like that happens. But it's interesting that you talk about your dad, because obviously this podcast is about parenting in the round, and the conversations that you would have had at the dinner table. I think my mum sometimes says, I don't know what I did wrong, because obviously I've ended up being her local MP. But you came from a family where politics was being discussed. What do your parents make of you being an MP?
look, my parents were both immigrants to this country. When they came here in 1972, they couldn't imagine that, well, they didn't have a child at that point, but they could imagine their potential child becoming a member of parliament. That was just, like, so, like, outlandish an idea. They are both, like, really proud. And, my dad's, like, quite a long-term Labour support. My mum, not so much. She votes Labour now, in a very hopeless seat. So
As I said, just checking,
yeah,
because I'm pretty sure my parents do vote for me, and they are proud of me, really. But it doesn't stop them telling me where I've got things wrong as their local
yeah,
MP.
yeah.
But
Well,
but
thankfully,
whether they
neither
vote
of
for
mine
me,
live
I'm
in my
like,
constituency. Yeah, I mean, I'm really pleased they don't live in my constituency. That would be a bit much. I would just be constantly getting casework from my pet. My office would literally just be doing my parents' casework. So I'm really pleased they're not my constituents. Yeah.
But what was it like for you? As so, you came from a family where politics was being talked about. Obviously, your children have always grown up with it. Do you feel? I mean, do you feel that that is an environment that is healthy, or do you feel that actually, because this job is so overwhelming, like when do you get time out? I guess is the question.
I don't think it is, because I talked about lots of other things, cultural stuff. We have a shared love of video games. Me and my kids. I'm the chair of the video games group in Parliament. I'm not really coming over well here that I do serious
You
stuff,
are
am I? Yeah.
no. You are knocking it out of the park on every kind of dad metric, aren't you? It's like, hey kids, we can go to the zoo, we can play games, we can go to the football, we can go to festivals. And what do I offer my daughter? Here's a leafleting round. Like, you are knocking it out of the park.
You do lots of cool stuff, Stella. So I'm sure when they get to know, when they're teens, they will love the stuff that you can offer. So no, so it it isn't like an everyday subject. It does come up, and they do ask me about stuff. And, like, my older son says, "What have you done this week in Parliament?" And I ask him what he's done at school. That's a lot shorter conversation, I can assure you, than what I've done in Parliament. So,
Do
the
you do
fact they
each
ask.
other a report card? Do you do a report card for each other? Does he give you like feedback about because of how we look right now as politicians?
My dad does, but no, my son does not. Yeah, yeah. My dad the other day was like, messaging me, when you look tired in the chamber. I was like, yeah, I've been there 5 hours waiting to speak. Yeah, I was tired. So, like I get it. I get it from the older generation, but not so much from the kids. Um, so yeah, yeah. But when my videos go on TikTok, then they look at those. So yeah, so I occasionally get a bit of a TikTok view.
Well, the fact that you are on TikTok, of course, I mean, that is, the archetypal, I would argue, of the one impression we have of dads in politics right now, and it's not a good one, is it? Because the only term that people use, especially on the left, is centrist dad. So does you being on TikTok make you a centrist dad, Alex? I guess is the question.
I don't really understand this concept of centrist dad, because I've never been a centrist, right? So, does it mean that all dads are centrist, or, and if not, then I'm definitely not a centrist dad. If by being a dad you're inherently centrist, then maybe. And the one sort of I suppose, uh, sort of feature of being a centrist dad that I probably would admit to is like with the kids really, rather than with adults. Although my 16-year-old is an adult, is like the dad jokes. I'll do it to wind them up. I will tell dad jokes to wind them up. You know, so
What's your worst dad joke, Alex? Come clean.
I'm not sure that I could really do that on this podcast because I do it to like situate. I still do it situationally rather than than like a Christmas cracker. So, but I will occasionally tell a really bad dad joke just to wind them up, and they hate it. They absolutely hate it.
But I think it is quite telling that the only image we have of fatherhood in politics is a negative one right now in terms of the language that people use to talk about it. And I was very struck recently. Keir Starmer was talking about how he determinedly carves out time to be with his family, and I thought that was quite unusual to hear, and particularly to hear men talking about fatherhood on kind of the everyday level, not just the becoming a father, but what do you do to make sure you're around your children as much as you can be. What did you make of what he said?
I think that's really important, and it's important to not just to physically be with them, but to do stuff that you all enjoy. Because when you look back on your childhood, one of the things that you look back on is things that you enjoyed doing with your parent, and obviously everybody's different, but I don't remember doing stuff at home. I remember the stuff that we did when we went out to places or did things, and even some of those things. So everybody's got different um, memories being a child and things they remember. So some of my really striking memories are things that maybe when you're a child might not be things that you'd enjoy doing necessarily. So I remember going when we lived in Sheffield on a march to support the Gdansk shipyard workers, to support Solidarność. Also, my mum was also a leading expert on a Ukrainian author and playwright, Gogol, and we used to have to go and see one of his plays. And I think we probably only saw it 2 or 3 times, but for me it seemed like a lot. Called Government Inspector, and I hated it. And I hated going to have to see the play. I think once we even went to see it, not in English, and that was even like, and I was like, I'm just sat here not really knowing what's going on. But those sort of things, stick with you, and it shows that your parents want to include you like in their life. So so even sometimes you might not enjoy the thing like the when I went with to an event with the Ugandan opposition that was meant to last an hour, and we were there for 5 hours with my kids, and they probably were like, that was far too long, which it was. They'll probably remember that for a very long time.
Yeah, possibly not in a good way. I mean, my kids are a lot younger than yours at the moment. So the last time I took them to an event, they proceeded to run around the event, hitting each other with the flags. It was Pakistan Independence Day, and they took the flags. They were running around hitting themselves. They ate a load of the food, and then promptly one of them vomited all over the floor. And at that point, I was kind of, I was like, I'm out. I'm out. I will never ever bring them back to anything. Maybe I should have threatened them with a 5 hour event, or just say, goggle on speed dial to like I'll make you listen to this and you'll never get to watch Rainbow Academy again if you do this. And maybe that's the way to encourage them not to think that politics is boring, and so not to get involved in it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I'd say you've got much more extreme experience than me, so
well, it is quite a sight when the MP is sort of on the floor mopping up the vomit, going, I'm so sorry, but yes, absolutely, what a wonderful event, and you want me to give my speech now, do you?" It's a kind of very awkward moment. But you mentioned there obviously about Ukraine, and you've been doing a lot of work on the situation in Ukraine and leading and going out there. What does that mean for your mum, for you to be going out to Ukraine so much?
yeah, my mum was researched the Ukrainian uh, playwright and author. My dad's family actually are from Ukraine, from Lviv, so like our family's quite involved in Ukraine historically. So it is quite emotional, and they obviously worry because you're going to a war zone, but I do feel the work's important. So one of the things we've been doing is taking aid convoys out, and my city Leeds, we're touring with Kharkiv. Kharkiv is literally 30 miles from Russia, and is under constant bombardment. So so you do feel really blessed to live in a country like the United Kingdom where we're not at war, we're at peace, and so it does push you to go above and beyond. A lot of the times with international issues, we think, oh well, going to the chamber and asking a question or making a speech, we're making some real impact. And it is important to do that, and it is important to particularly hold ministers and the prime minister to account. But I felt particularly with Ukraine that we need to do a lot more than that. So going out, taking aid, raising money, those are really important things, and things that will make a different, admittedly a small difference, but will make a difference to people's lives. And I know that the work we've done has saved people's lives in Kharkiv, so I'm really proud of doing that.
It's, it's incredible, and you are expressing that it is the political is the personal in a literal way. How does that happen with your family? So, what do your family make of you doing? Because obviously, you've also been very involved in the conflict in Israel and Gaza. What do your family think about your involvement, and do they worry?
Yeah. The first time I went to Ukraine, which was February 23, I drove a van from Newcastle to Leeds and it stayed overnight. And I said goodbye to my children by the van before I got in the van. And I really didn't know what we were, letting ourselves in for. And I did, I was probably being a bit over dramatic, but I was a little bit like, I didn't actually say you might not see me again, but there was very much that. It was quite emotional. um, and then I went and came back, and it was obviously fine. And then so the two subsequent times was a bit, they were a bit like, oh, he's just going to Ukraine, it's fine, So like they're a lot less bothered now. And then when I went, I have to say, in February, I managed to go to both, Israel, the edge of Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Ukraine, all within the same month. So that was a bit too much. I'm not doing that again. And it was a little bit like, yeah, this seems like a bit dangerous, and maybe this is not a great idea. And my mum, I didn't actually tell. I just said I'm going to Israel. I didn't reveal any of that because she would have flipped, because Ukraine was bad enough. But yeah, but it was, it's all fine. I'm here in one piece, so it's all good.
So, Alex, what you're telling us is that, as an MP and a person helping make decisions about the future of the country, you go to lots of really scary places, but we can't tell your mum that, because otherwise you'll get into trouble. You'll get onto the naughty step.
Yeah, I just know it's, well, maybe we're all still our parents' children, aren't we? However old we are, um, but there is, like, I just don't want to worry her, and she does get worried, and she got very worried the first time I went to Ukraine. So that level of stress was probably not necessary. While going to Israel is a lot from her, because she lived in Israel, she came here from Israel. That's like normal. That's like a normal thing to do, and like she has friends that have been to Israel since the 7th of October, so that was fine. But being in the West Bank, that would worry her. And and actually there were points in the West Bank where we were harassed and intimidated. So it wasn't all plain sailing, but at no point did I think I'd experienced violence. Although we were with people, Israelis, who had. So it's but the important thing is that is to speak with power on something. You need to have an understanding of what it is on the ground. It's all very well to have a theoretical understanding of something, but nothing beats the practical understanding of something. And I've learned that in this job. um and I'm not a person that shies away from things. And actually, that, having kids makes that harder. That, because there is always a risk. But there's a risk of me crossing the road and getting run over by a bus. So the risk is inherent everywhere, aren't they? Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions about how bus drivers are in Leeds, but I do think probably going to war zones and conflict zones is slightly heightened risk as opposed to walking around the streets of Leeds. Even I feel the need to defend your constituency at some point.
Yeah. Everybody jokes about by-elections when I go on these trips. So we don't want a by-election, Alex. All of that. Yeah.
But I guess there is a serious point. I mean, the point about the Mummafesto is about saying when parenting and politics combine, MPs are human beings, so inevitably the impact on our families or the issues and causes that we want to campaign about, the things that we're concerned about, does play into people's minds. In some ways, in a very powerful way. You've been a very powerful voice about the need for a ceasefire and peace in Israel, Gaza, because of your own personal family history. But it also, as you're expressing, hits us in the other way, in that, we probably need to make sure your mum doesn't hear this podcast, because otherwise you're going to have to admit to her that you went to the West Bank. And as you say, that would worry her and that would cause her stress.
Yeah. I'm not too worried, Stella, that she's going to be listening to your podcast. I'm afraid to say that bit of the listenership you
It's
might not
okay.
capture. But
Not
but
yet.
we are,
I'm hopeful,
yeah.
Alex. I'm hopeful.
But we are putting out videos on YouTube, and sometimes I do stuff and I don't tell her, and then one of her friends will see something and then will message her, and then she'll ring me. So it's always a danger. Somebody's always watching. Somebody's always watching. Yeah.
But what's the punishment? What's the punishment? Because my mum plays a blinder in like being totally supportive, but also totally guilt tripping you. And she's been doing that to me since I was a young girl, and would do all sorts of terrible things. And she would never get totally cross with me, because that would be easy. You'd have an argument. I just feel really bad that I'd let her down. So she was an absolute parenting jujitsu master, my mum, like that.
I think, yeah, I'd get a bit of a lecture. It'd be more like my concerns about her and her stress, because our parents are not getting any younger, Stella. So you worry about stressing your parents out in a way that you wouldn't have done when you were 16. As I know, with my own 16-year-old, he doesn't care about whether he stresses me out or not. And when I was 16, I didn't care about stressing my parents out or not. But when you're in your 40s and they're in their 70s, that's quite a different that's quite a different logistical issue to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's also part of the inevitability, if we want a politics that is more diverse and has more people from different backgrounds, that of course family life is going to be part of that. But the question also behind this podcast is, what can we do to help make that easier to manage? So if you had a magic wand, what would you do, especially as somebody who works on international issues, to make it easier for people who have families to be part of our political process?
I think. I mean, and this is a long running issue. We particularly actually the laws have it worse, I'd say, but we have unfriendly hours. Hours are unfriendly. The way that Parliament is structured, the order paper, the timetable of events structured, doesn't really lend itself to family life. If you went to the Australian Parliament, they would think that we were crackers. They have far fewer sitting weeks. They're better structured. They do things quite differently. I think it's a much bigger country, admittedly, yeah, but still. Um,
You think it's a
yeah,
question of space? Like, if we had more space, we could be better at being more inclusive.
no, it's just they have, I think it's like 20, 22, 23 sitting weeks a year. So that's when they have to be in Canberra. Nobody likes being in Canberra, which I think probably helps their system, because Canberra and London are not similar at all. But that would help. Less sitting weeks, better hours. That if because we lose people as well. So people come in and it doesn't really work with their families. And and I've not done this, but some colleagues who are Northern MPs have moved their families to London, and so that creates a whole other dynamic. We need to try and do things better to get that diversity. Actually, the thing was 150 years ago, or less, probably 99% of MPs with families, their kids were in boarding school, right? So didn't matter. Now, I don't know any
Mm.
of our colleagues on our side whose kids are in boarding school. They all live with their children. The children go to school here. That's quite a different proposition.
So, if you were to put something in a Mummafesto, and I know you're going to make fun of me for it, it's a terrible, terrible pun, but maybe you can come up with one better for the coming general election. Obviously, you've got an election coming up. what would it be? What would you want to see on the table that would benefit families in your constituency, my constituency, that would just make Britain a better place for these issues?
I think for families in my constituency, the one thing, and I think, yeah, I'm probably semi stealing one of your ideas here, Stella. So I apologise in advance. But we've sort of 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking a lot about families just about managing on their money. That sort of broke after COVID and with the massive energy spikes and with wages trailing behind and rampant inflation. And people aren't really coping. We're having more and more people having just to get through the month, having to borrow money, and we still are seeing usurious levels of interest. We've still got payday lending. We've still, that I would cap interest rates on a percentage above base, so you would not be able to lend money on, say, 5, 6, 7 points above base. It would not be legal to do that. Those companies would still make a lot of money, but it would mean that families weren't we just see so many people in huge financial crisis, and then it's compounded by borrowing money, really high interest rates for really short
Yeah.
periods. Yeah.
I think it is really overwhelming, actually, just how many people. The thing I would say is there's just too much month at the end of their money, and as MPs, when you're wanting to try and help people have life with their families and have fun with their families, thinking about the fact there's just no money around. In fact, there's massive debts and everything. It casts a cloud over everything, and you see
Absolutely.
the companies making so much money from putting people in that position and deliberately putting people in that position. It is. I am completely surprised that debt isn't a more part of our conversation about family life, because it's such a division between people. Those people have the money to be able to take the kids out and get out of the house, and those people who don't, because they can't afford even to add to the debt they've already got. And I think it's interesting, across the country, we all, as MPs, we see that and we work with people in those positions every single day. So it is constantly on your mind, just the sheer grinding misery of it.
Yeah, it has a really adverse effect on people's mental health, and I think parents who are under that debt burden, the relationship with their children. I actually
Mm.
think it caused family breakdown. We've seen a huge spike in looked after children, and actually that's one of the reasons that councils are falling over. It's not the only reason, and because it's really expensive to put children into care, and we shouldn't be putting children into care because their families just haven't got any money. That shouldn't be something that we do in this country. There are very legitimate reasons to put children to care where it's unsafe for them to live in a house, but through a lack of money, that's just terrible. And so, I'm not saying that that's the extreme end, but we've got a whole range of issues which a lack of money, and then laid on top of that high levels of debt with high interest rates, is compounding.
Yeah, so I'm with you that we put into the Mummafesto dealing with personal debt as an issue to help families who are struggling in this country. I'm also totally jealous of you being the shadow minister for zoos, and I'm begging you not to tell my kids about that, or else I am going to dob you into your mum. So I feel like we've got a non-aggression pact now, Alex. Thank you so much for being part of the Mummafesto today. We really appreciate it. And please do stay safe, because Parliament really needs you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Stella. It's been great.
I really hope you enjoyed my chat with Alex today, and the thought that MPs can go to conflict zones and deal with some really, really difficult and important sensitive issues, but they're still quite frightened they're going to get a telling off from their mum. If you've enjoyed the Mummafesto, please do tell other people about it and help us create this space bringing parenting and politics together. Find out more details about Alex's work and the next episodes of the Mummafesto on my social media, and thanks so much for listening.